had some success with our thing. I will stress on the computer groups a bit more, but I think the political groups and some of the cultural things that are happening there, they are also happy with the Netzladen. Maybe next slide, can we see that? I think the best thing that came out of Netzladen, although it was not a group or, it was the Frostcon in 2006, a free and open software conference, which came into idea from people who met in Netzladen, who organized it there. The after party was there. The conference per se was at a university building, but everything was born out of the Netzladen. And also there are some open software projects which came out of Netzladen. Tunnelblick, which is Macintosh GUI for OpenVPN. There's also people who wanted to do things differently from the OpenWRT project and called themselves FreeWRT, and they also met each other in Netzladen, organized a lot of things in Netzladen, so I also count this as a success story of the Netzladen. One thing that still has a very special spot in my heart, although it doesn't exist anymore, was the salon we had for some time, when some crazy member of the Netzladen crowd had the idea that she either met, political geeks or technical geeks in Netzladen, but she wanted to have something else. So she set up a time slice on Sundays where we would have a salon in the, in the style of the 19th century upper class literary salon, where people who are educated discuss different topics. And the topics that were forbidden at that salon were politics and computers. Everything else could be discussed. You could talk about music theory, you could talk about food, you could talk about anything that would not... I don't get it. Did I say something funny? Well, anything that would not be boring to your listeners, and people would prepare like little text that they would read out, or would play some music that they think would be meaningful to the others, but no talking about politics or computers at that point. I really hope we will, this thing will come into being again. It's a pity that it doesn't take place at the moment, but yeah, this is also for me a little success story of the Netzladen. That's all from me, and I think we have a lot of time for questions, and this is really what we need, because I think there will be lots of questions from you.
Yeah, so we have time for questions from you. We have a few topics that we find interesting. And we don't need the computer anymore. Whatever. Okay, are there any questions? Okay, so
I actually have a question here to your right. What are the practical, what is the practical result of being able to sit in a room and talk about technology? What is the advantage of being able to physically sit next to someone as opposed to, for example, electronic communications? Why do you still need physical spaces? Because it's expensive, no?
Okay, for starters, it's not that expensive. Electricity and rent in the Netzladen is about 300 euros per month for the space we rented. That's pretty cheap, I think. And this is even something that people who don't have much money can afford if they all throw their money together. The advantages are so manifold that I cannot even. We would be sitting here tomorrow if I would tell you all the stories about the advantages. But being able to walk into a room and find lots of people and being pointed to, this guy knows about blah, blah, blah. And this is what you experience at the Congress all the time. You go down to the Hack Center and you ask about something and someone points you to the guy sitting in the corner and then you have a chat with him for a while. And of course, you could be looking up web pages or stuff, but face-to-face communication, nothing can beat it. And you can do a lot of interesting things with electronics communication. And the other thing is, as hackers, you need a lab. As groups who, you know, print leaflets or have banners for demonstrations, you need storage room. You need something where you can be sure that you can just store it away and use it whenever you want. And you don't have to depend on people's homes or on, you know, whatever. You just have your very own room and your own lab. And then once you have a lab, everyone's imagination will go wild and people will find a use for it.
Just imagine it as a permanent congress, which is happening all the time. And what you really have a lot there, which you don't have so much online, is you have feedback. And feedback in many ways is the currency of non-profit work. You get feedback for something cool you do. You get people tell you, people join in. They join your project. They help you out. They mentor you. You have, if you have a lab with a few hundred people there, and every evening and 24 hours, seven days a week, there are about 15 people there. You go there, you have such a diverse skill set, which you can tap into, which you can exchange. You learn about new ideas. We have so many projects starting there, and also people find jobs through, because it's a network. Lots of people find their jobs now through our hacker labs, and projects start, and companies start, and non-profit projects, and open source projects. It all starts because people get together. It's just like at the Congress, where lots of hacker groups started here because people met for the first time at the camp or the Congress.
Yeah, I would say it's basically about the dynamics that you have when you are really actually talking to a person that's in the same room with you, and also laughing with people that are in the same room with you is much more real than chatting and everybody's laughing for themselves. So, and also for people who are actually not inside a community, it's great to have these places in order for them to go there and explore new dimensions of organizing or networking, and to get to know something about computers or 3D or whatever people are doing there. So I think it's very important not only for hackers to have the ability of abstraction, but also to have a social space where they can get together and meet and have a relationship, an actual, you know?
I've been involved in lots of different collective spaces, not all of them to do with technology or with politics, but many of them kind of intersecting with those things. And one of the things that I've always taken from the last disaster that I've been involved in to the next disaster that I'm involved in are many interesting failures. And I just wondered if you could share some of the interesting failures that you've had along the way of developing your different projects, because I think those are the things you learn most from.
Within an existing project or while starting a project?
Well, either really, but I'm thinking of when I first went to the Seabase, for example, I noticed that the bar had a system for registering when you were using resources and a kind of currency system, and I think I was inspired by that. And I've heard subsequently that perhaps it doesn't work as well as it could do. So there's loads of ideas that may come out when you're starting something or as you're in the process of doing it that nearly work or should work but don't work. And I think those are the ones that, you know, you can actually make something that does work from.
Yeah, I mean, from the history of Seabase, they can talk hours about failures, which is in a way is such a hackerspace also a good place to do failures and to try out different things. I think one important part is for the question, if you start a new space, is you have to make the decision, is that a space which should be continuously open, or is it a project space? If it is a project space, you say, for example, okay, we do this project for half a year, and people come into it, and the energy which people put into it is different than, okay, we start something new which should exist for ages. And this is one of the main problems in the Seabase, that it was established, and the whole setting of rituals, of how decision making is dealt, how new people come into the organization, how the money flow is going, how donations were made, are built up on a system which more was a project than a long-term thingy. So this is something where you have to be really careful that your rule set you define at the beginning is always flexible, and that you, if you do a long-term project, that you overthink it again and again. Especially if it grows in a way you don't expect, then you lose the control. Or if people changing, so you have someone who's taking care of the thing with the drinks, and he's doing it all the time, and then he disappears, and nobody knows to do it. And so always reflecting your own structure is, I think, an important advice if you start something like that. And then a lack of transparency is also a big failure I often see, which is you said about feedback is the currency of such project. And I think seeing what's going on in your environment, so seeing, okay, this group of people is doing that cool shit, and they are doing that, and so this is also some inspiration for it. So having such a transparency is also really important, which is in a Seabase total shitty. So I think when I'm in there and I took a look at Seabase crew member monitors, I see cool shit. But if I took from the outer side, so look on the website or on the wiki or wherever, I couldn't find something of that. Yeah, so there's two things.
So I think some problems you can get into are, well, you get into problems all the time. You need to find solutions. For example, we try to do things using consensus too. So basically we try to interpret consensus into things. We let people, we discuss, we try to get things onto the mailing list if it concerns everyone. But regarding what Jens said about doing everything just with consensus, we noticed this is not working for us, for example. So when we had a flame war regarding smoking, so I think it's the reason the term flame war ever came up, because it's the hottest discussion we've ever had. Where can you smoke? Are you allowed to smoke at all in a hack lab? I think that goes with the zeitgeist too. But so we couldn't find a solution, and so we just linked it together after a lot of discussion and having real-life discussion with lots of people and so on, where everyone just stated their points and some people took extreme positions. We decided, please make a complete solution, write it down or make a graphic of it, put it on our wiki, and then we are going to vote over it. And what we did is you could just order all the offers. We had 5 options, and you could sort them. And then you could vote, this is my first preference, second preference, third preference, because we realized sometimes, and this is the only time we really had to do this, sometimes any decision is better than no decision, but if you have a decision, you want it to be legitimized and not have people always question who made that decision. So we just voted. We thought, in this case, voting is good. And we have other problems. We have problems with trash that is, I think every hack lab has the problem that people bring in old computer hardware And you're not allowed to throw it away because it's still working. And other people want, yeah. So we have those old CRT monitors, and we are not allowed